Hello, this is a demo of a log parsing tool I wrote recently. Originally, it started out as specific to kubelet because I was debugging a problem and the only thing I had available to me were kubelet logs. And there are a lot of log messages in kubelet, so trying to filter out the ones that were relevant to what I was debugging was kind of a problem. And I was thinking that a tool would be really helpful with that. However, as I was writing it, I realized that a lot of what I was doing was not really specific to the kubelet logs and was actually useful for pretty much any service log, especially any service log that has a lot of messages, not all of which are maybe relevant. And so I've made it more generic, and so now there are separate presets as far as filters for different services, and you can also add custom filters if you want to. So the way that the tool works is you'll have a list of identifiers over here. It's pre-populated with a pod name that I was interested in from the bug I was looking at. But you can use basically any identifier over here. And if a log line doesn't have one of the identifiers in it, it will never be returned by the tool. On top of that, you have the filters over here. And so if you have the pod that you're interested in, but you don't want every single log message related to that pod, you can also add the filters. And so we can, for example, select the kubelet preset. And this is going to just give us log messages that contain the pod name and also contain one of these messages. So we can take a look at that real quickly, click the parse button, and then we can look at the filtered logs. And you can see we've got logs related to that particular pod, and then we've got the different messages. Specifically, I was debugging a crash loop backoff problem, so that's part of why that's included, but it also seems generally interesting if you're looking at kubelet logs to know if something was crash looping. So if you're looking at this and you want to know, okay, but what happened right before that crash loop backoff that was maybe not included in the filters, there is also the All Logs button, which you can use, and this will give you all of the logs that are relevant to the pod with the filters highlighted, so you can see we can scroll down and see some more stuff here. And it can be useful because, as you can see, there were some messages related to the pod right before the crash loop. I don't know that they were actually all that helpful here. Maybe. The API int resolvable was related to the bug. So that's for if you're just looking at a single pod. Now, if we want to look at another pod, we can add an identifier. And I happen to know that there was one for host 3 as well. And so if we reparse, then we can take a look at the logs from host 3. And this is basically the same thing as what we just looked at from host 4. If you want to see the interaction between two different pods, we also have these interleaved buttons up here. So we can look at the filtered logs interleaved. And so that's going to include both host 4. And if we scroll down, we'll also see the messages from host 3. And they should all be in order, so you can kind of see what was happening when and which pods came up first and which ones maybe died first. Just basically see multiple different things all in one view here. So that's pretty much kubelet. As I mentioned, we also have a keep alive D preset, and the presets right now are all hard-coded into the tool. At some point, I would like to add the ability to load those from files so that people can define their own custom ones. But right now, this is just a tool for me primarily, so that wasn't super necessary. So I happen to know I have a keep alive D log that was pulled out of a musgather. And so we've switched to the keep alive D filter, we switched to log file, and then we'll take a look at the API VIPs from this log. And you may have to look at the logs to figure out what the right identifiers are. I already know that these two will work. And so we'll go ahead and reparse. And then we can look at the API 0. And so the reason there are two different API VIPs is that this was a dual stack cluster. So there's one for v4 and one for v6. So this one, can't tell for sure. It's probably v4 because of the v4 address, although the communication doesn't necessarily have to match. So what we can see here pretty easily, and if you've looked at Keep Alive D logs before, you'll know there's normally a lot more messages than this. So this has really condensed down what we're looking at. We start in the backup state, then we get a priority 0 advertisement, which means that the node holding the VIP is shutting down. And so, of course, then we don't receive advertisements from it anymore. So we enter the master state. However, because of the way Keep Alive D works, another node also entered the master state, and it had a higher IP address than ours, which is what Keep Alive D uses to break ties. So we went back to backup state. And so you can see it's really easy to kind of follow that sequence of events when the logs are filtered. It's much harder if you're having to read through the whole log and kind of just pull out what is interesting to you. And here again, we can take a look at the interleaved logs and see that API 0 and API 1 basically working in parallel. Like I said, it's just dual stack. So we would expect that both of the VIPs are sort of doing the same thing because the nodes are all doing the same thing. And so you pretty much see parallel messages all the way through here. And I guess we can do a quick demo of adding another filter. So there's a message that shows up a lot for gratuitous ARPs. And so maybe we can add that. But first we need to reparse. So we can take a look at that, and now we'll see we had the gratuitous ARP messages down here at the bottom, and also a few further up probably, yeah. A lot of times those aren't that interesting because it just means that we're holding the VIP when that message was logged, and usually you can tell that from one of the other messages. But if you did need to see when gratuitous ARPs were being sent, that would be the way you could do it. You can also, let's say you didn't care about priority messages, you can delete those and then you won't see that anymore. So yeah, now we're just getting advertisement messages. So that's pretty much it for the demo. I hope this was interesting. Maybe the tool will be useful to you. If you want to get in touch, leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.